is Saturday, October 12th. I think so. 12th. Yes, that is correct. And live stream number 19, 19 days in a row. Going at it, going hard. Topics for today. First up, Jesse Tyler's new tattoo. We're going to give a quick shout out to that. Fear of Insignificance on the startup chat. What to do with $1 billion. WYSIWYG, dogs and recessions, testimonials, and monthly pricing billed annually. That's a rant. That last one is a rant. Gonna rant that one. We're gonna rant that one out pretty good. So with no further ado, let's jump on in. Jesse Tyler tweeted 17 hours ago, getting my first tattoo today, welcoming any guesses on what it is or last minute suggestions. Okay, if you guessed realistic bass with a derby hat, you're in luck. To which I replied, obvs. That's a hard word to pronounce, obvs. It's much easier to type. I think Jesse, I think we all called that one. I mean, that was kind of a no-brainer that you were going to go for the realistic bass with a derby hat. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine anybody was at all surprised by that move. Real quick, I just need to test. I do this every single time, but I have to test my chat to see that my chat. Oh yeah, I forgot. I have to refresh Restream chat. And I have to give myself a chat message and see if it comes up. Because, all right, I think I'm getting chat messages. Sweet. All right. So anyway, that was cool. No, sweet tat, dude. For reals. It's a nice tat. I love it. All right. Next up. Next up. The fear of doing something insignificant. So this is a podcast called The Startup Chat with Steli FD and Heaton Shaw. And it's a great podcast. Actually, used to listen to this way back in the day, and it's been a while. I've dipped back in recently. And episode 456, Fear of Doing Something Insignificant, I caught yesterday. There's a couple things that stuck out to me about it. One of them was, when you start something, got some nice show notes here. Although, it's funny. I keep thinking about how literally nothing is properly responsive, and these, by the way, Oliver, when you're editing the video, you can cut this part out of this topic. We don't need to include this in this. This is a side rant for the live stream. Like, it makes it hard to see the content here, this share jobby. Anyways, so, so a couple things that stuck out to me. One of them was people being hesitant to do something because it's too small. And you hear that a lot. You throw an idea out, and the first question is always, will that scale? And is that going to be $1 billion company, whatever? It's like, who cares? I've been thinking about that in the context of these videos I'm doing. It always starts small. You get hardly any views. I'm looking at videos that have 4 views on them, and it's depressing. It is depressing to see those numbers. It's almost better to not see the numbers at all, and to focus on meaningful interaction that you're getting. But what they were talking about is, how do you define small? It's so subjective. Are you defining that as, if it's a business, are you defining that as enough to make a living? You can make a living on a very reasonable amount of money. Are you defining that as, there's so many ways to define it, which I thought was interesting. And then another segment in there was, he was talking about how you shouldn't be rigid about who you are, which was, if you're a founder, and they were talking about like somebody who like was a tech founder and raised a bunch of money, and then now they became a life coach. And it was like, man, like there could be the sort of stigma of like, why would you become a life coach? Like, you were like a legit tech founder. But it's like, dude, if that's what you want to do and that's what you love, do it. Like, who cares, you know? And sometimes to be honest, like I think about this. I'm always thinking about what's my plan B if business goes downhill. And even though objectively the business is doing absolutely great, um, but I constantly think about that. Like, man, what's my plan B? And and then like once you're a founder or a business owner, it's like, oh, if I have to go back and get a job, you know, that would be a failure, right? And I think that's an unhealthy perspective, and it's a perspective that I have. And a lot of times, honestly, I think to myself, man, even though financially the business is doing great, like I might be happier with a job, like a regular job, you know. And sometimes I think like I should seriously consider that. But there is that sense of, you know, pride that you have being a business owner and stuff. But I thought that was a great perspective on it of like, don't be rigid. Like if you're just because you're an X today, whether that's business founder, whether that's a CTO, whether that's a CMO, whether that's a marketing manager, and you want to, and then maybe a year from now, you're going to be doing something totally else. Maybe you're going to start writing. Maybe you're going to become a mechanic. Maybe you're going to whatever, like become a beauty vlogger, right? Like if you love to do that, do it, you know, and if you can make it work, then go for it, you know? So I thought that was really cool. All right, next up, startup podcast. So I was listening to this podcast yesterday. If you haven't noticed a trend in my podcast listening habits, they all have to do with startups. Actually, they don't, but we're seeing that trend here. So startup podcast from Gimlet. Last final season where they're talking about their acquisition by Spotify. Talked about the first episode in a previous stream, and just a great. I'm loving this season so much. It's so good. Anything Alex Bloomberg touches as far as podcasts he does himself are just solid gold. And so it's funny that I just before recording this looked up the tweet because I wanted to use it for my screen share. But it's funny that because the title of the episode was actually something different than this. The title of the episode was Thanksgiving in Stockholm or something like that. And it talked about how they went to a meeting in Stockholm for around Thanksgiving. But anyway, the part that stuck out to me that I noted down in my notes was what would you do with $1 billion? And turns out in their tweet about it, they actually used that same piece there. So, you know, great minds think alike. No big deal. No big deal. But anyways, there was a part in the episode where they're talking to the founder of Spotify, and he goes, they're having this conversation. This is before they knew that they were going to be acquired. There's just sort of early conversations. And the guy asked them, and you know, they did a bunch of prep for this meeting and stuff, and the Spotify, I think CEO founder asked them, what would you do if I gave you $1 billion? And they were like caught totally off guard by it. They were like, I don't know, because the scale they're operating at is, you know, probably in the millions, low millions, you know, and they talked about how they were struggling with cash flow and all sorts of struggles that they were having. And so just this question, like, totally hit them out of left field, and they felt like they sort of didn't have a good answer for it. But and then ultimately this Spotify CEO said that, you know, he liked the way they answered it in the sense that they struggled with the question as opposed to just saying, oh, you know, we would hire 1,000 people and create 1,000 shows, like, because they care so much about quality that, you know, that it couldn't just give that answer because it's not that simple to scale quality so well. And so it made me think, like, what if I was asked that question? What if you were asked that question? Like, for whatever it is, let's say it's in the context of your business, in the context of a charity you're interested in or a cause you're interested in. Like, what would you do if you had $1 billion? It's a wild question because most of us are not, you know, used to thinking at that scale, obviously. And it kind of forces you to, like, open your mind up a little bit and think, like, man, I have no freaking idea. I don't know what I'd do with, a lot less than that. Um, it's also funny how this is the thing I've been thinking about. It's funny how we think in terms of like million, and then the next thing up is billion, right? Like millionaires, billionaires, as if they're like adjacent to each other. Whereas like it's a couple of orders of magnitude in between, like we should have a word for 100 millionaire. I think there is a word for that, but like those guys, it's like all the hatred is directed at the billionaires, right? The 100 millionaires are like, they're chilling, they're like not the target of any rage or anything like that. But anyways, yeah, so I think that was it on that. All right, next up, Webflow has delivered on WYSIWYG. So I keep talking about Webflow, and darn it, I'm going to keep talking about it because, by the way, notice how I didn't click on their ad. I hope you guys appreciate that. I'm so used to ignoring the ads and like purposefully not clicking on the ads because number one, who wants to click on an ad? And number two, you kind of feel guilty that you're charging them money for it. Google's user experience is just so rough these days. So I was thinking about this. I've been talking about Webflow. I've been using Webflow. I launched my new website on Webflow, which is coming up later in the program. And I've just been having so much fun with it. Quick sip of coffee. And I've been thinking about like, man, it's such a great product. And it occurred to me that basically what they've done is they've delivered on WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, which is crazy because we've been using the term WYSIWYG. WYSIWYG editor is we've been talking about that type of thing for what, 10 years, 15 years? I don't even know how long. And there's been all sorts of tools that try to do that, little text editor widgets where you can bold text and you can whatever. But then, well, when you publish it, guess what? Shows up differently in this context and shows up differently and doesn't work this way. And it's almost a joke. Like WYSIWYG is almost a joke at this point because so many people have tried and failed to do it. And that's basically what they've done. I mean, in their editor, what you see is what you get. Like it just works, it just works. And I think that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm going to try to be a little bit less long-winded because these streams are going super long. These streams are going super duper long. And, I'm going to just get to my point, say the point, get in, get out, call it a day. Okay. Next up, and I do not have any screen reference for this one, which I should have. So I am going to just Google walking your dog because the topic is, there we go. I'm going to just pull up this picture because now I have a nice, see, look at that. You see what I'm talking about? Nothing is responsive. Nothing, literally nothing is responsive. Like, all I want to see is the image. Can I just see the image? Can I just pull up an image? What does it take to just pull up an image? All I want to do is pull up an image. Okay, there we go. I've got my image now for my topic. So, what does walking your dog have to do with operating a business in a recession? Is a question that I'm sure you've asked yourself recently. Okay, so I've thought about. Okay, great. Now pop-ups are popping up. Great, fantastic. Close that out. One thing I've thought about is that we're probably overdue for a recession. It's been, I think, over 10 years. This is something Gary Vee talks about a good amount, and that he's sort of waiting for a recession to happen because then prices will go down on businesses that he can acquire, and also because he feels like there's a lot of quote fake entrepreneurs out there because it's so easy. There's so much money in the economy. It's so easy to raise money, kind of a thing. And that when recessions happen, it sort of cuts out a lot of that fluff. and like the people that really want to compete are like, yeah, let's do it. Like this is the real time to compete kind of a thing, which is an interesting perspective. And I you know, I mean, I'm not that like confident about a recession. I'd be stressed out about it. But I also do think that like in some ways Commerce Hero would do well because people that are paying, paying overpriced rates for X, Y, and Z might look for more affordable options or whatever. But anyways, um, but so I'm walking my dog. So yesterday it was cold in Austin for the first time this basically season. It's been summer and it's been pretty hot, and then it's been like 90s, hundreds 90s. And then yesterday morning it was like 40 degrees, 46 or something like 41. So it was pretty cold. I know. If you live in Buffalo, you're yelling at me because it's not really cold. I get it, but it was cold relatively speaking. Um, but anyways, so I'm walking my dog, and one of the things about walking a dog, especially when your dog is sort of young, is that every time you walk by other dogs, um, your dog goes crazy, and you got to pull on the leash, and it's just sort of frustrating. Like you sort of just want to like not see any other dogs so that you can just walk your dog in peace, which I know is a very selfish perspective, but it's the truth, darn it. So I know, so like, during the summer when the weather is nicer, in the morning, you run into tons of people walking their dogs, right? But yesterday it was cold, and, like there was hardly anybody out. Like I don't think I saw anybody on my walking path. And so that's the analogy, is that when things get tough, right? It was cold outside, so it was harder to go for a walk. And I was actually whining myself in the morning about it. I was like, I don't know if I should walk because it's like cold and it's a little wet outside. My wife gave me a swift kick in the butt and was like, just put on your jacket. So when it's harder to do something, less people are going to do it. But it also means that if you are doing it, like there's less, I guess you call it competition, but it's just the playing field is kind of cleared out. And so that's so similar in business, right? If there's a recession, it's not something that you're necessarily happy about, but it means that the field will be cleared out. There'll be less competition, and you can just do your thing. So anyway, that was that. All right, next up, website testimonials. Okay, so I finally launched my new website, KalenJordan.com. I think I need to get out of the habit of taking so many sips of coffee because it's a little awkward. Um, this is a lot of fun. Like I said, I launched it on Webflow, and I think I talked about the website already a little bit the other day, but I beefed up a couple of bits. And by the way, in all my ranting about responsive, notice how nice and responsive this Webflow theme is. Boom. Now, a couple of little issues there, I guess. The spacing here probably could be better but the way it's doing columns is interesting. But yeah, so a little spacing, but it's still quite nice if I do say so myself. Let me zoom in on this. Yeah, buddy, there we go. So I was goofing around with this, and I started posting some tweets from people. I'm gonna just add to this section. Like I'm gonna just keep adding to it. Like I'm gonna have like 100 things here eventually, of just fun stuff. True, like sincere testimonials as well as goofy things. Brent Peterson, I now depend on to try out whatever app. Oh, I now depend on Kalen. I messed up my copy and paste. To try out whatever app, website, or new product in the internet that I'm not interested in, so I can sign up and then become interested in it. Which is funny. I think he's referring to Headliner, the video editing app that I showed him, and he's been using. I saw your first video yesterday, Brent. Looks great. Looks fantastic. Isaiah, really, really awesome Commerce Hero client. Kalen has helped us build a world-class team at a much more affordable price than other recruiting options. Woot, woot. Ash Smith, was responding to Brent's thing. He said, 10 out of 10. I don't know what you're selling, but Brent sold it to me, which cracked me up. Buddy Galen, who, by the way, my parents were actually considering naming me that Galen, and then they switched. They swapped the the G out for a K. Pretty sweet. Kaylin Jordan is a good enough Twitter follow to keep me from unfollowing him. That cracked me up. Dan Davies. I think he's Canadian, all over my LinkedIn feed, and Bums Magento. I think Bums is a British term for like sells Magento or something like that. I don't know why everyone thinks I'm Canadian. I used to understand it because I worked for Sweet Tooth remotely, who's a Canadian company. And so I understood that, but that was a long time ago now. So I don't know why people still think that, but I'll take it. Canadians are cool. Canadians are awesome. It's actually really good. Philip Jackson, this I literally wrote this myself. Why? Because I was trying to populate my template, and I thought it was hilarious. He's all right. I've done a podcast with him for a few years, and I'm not entirely sick of him yet. So I wrote that myself until Phil decides to write an actual one for me. Hint, hint. Cal Pesh. Kalen is Mr. King of Magento podcast. That's an inside joke from a recent tweet that Cal Pesh posted, which cracked me up. Now, the best testimonial by far is Aaron Sheehan's. Shout out to Aaron. Kalen is a dynamic, visionary thought leader who routinely excels at life, liberty, and the pursuit of dudeness. His physique is an example to us all. A handsome man as well as a powerful man. Oh, yeah, that cracked me up so much. I love it. So anyway, I was having fun with that. If you would like to add to the section of testimonials here, you're more than welcome. Only the highest in testimonial quality will be accepted. So make it a good one. All right, last up. How long have I been going for? 22 minutos. 22 minutos. Okay. All right, so this got a lot of traction yesterday. Can't stand when I see this. Price is so... Okay, I'm going to be honest. This was Webflow's pricing. Now, as I've said, I love Webflow with an undying love. But they did this pricing thing which drives me bonkers. Which is, you see the pricing, $20 a month. Cool. All right, let's check it out. Sounds good. Go to purchase. And then it says, oh, by the way, it's billed annually. So $240 a year. And I'm going, and then there's a monthly option, of course, and you click the monthly option, and the monthly option is higher because they want to incentivize you to pay annually. And it's like, dude, don't say $20 a month then if it's not $20 a month. There's no such thing as $20 a month billed annually. That's called $240 a year. It's like imagine if people billed lifetimely, right? $20 a month. We just bill lifetimely. So you can pay us, go ahead and pay us a quick $12,000 for lifetime access. It's like the same thing as that. It's ridiculous. So a bunch of people, this got a lot more traction than usual. So this is resonating with the people. So whoever's out there, and by the way, I understand why they're doing it. I would bet money that it drives revenue. It increases revenue. But I mean, I guess in a technical sense, it's maybe possibly true that if you pay $240 a year, you're paying $20 a month on average, but you're not. Because like on my books, I paid $240 in October. Well, I didn't because I obviously went for the monthly option and overpaid. And by the way, Webflow's pricing, I think, was like $16 a month annually and $20 a month to month or whatever. So, but if I pay the yearly, on my books are not going to say $20 a month. they're going to say $240 in October, which, I don't like that from a bookkeeping perspective. So anyways, that's all I got for today. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have yourself a fantastic Saturday, and I will see you tomorrow.